Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I just want to let you know this is an educational video and it's put out there based on my strength, hope, and professional experience. The most important thing is that you realize you make the decisions here. We can put information out for you, but we're not telling you definitely what to do. It's your life. You have to make your decisions. There's no question about it. And this is not counseling. This is very much focused on what we've learned, what I've learned over these past 40 years, being in the addictions field for approximately over 28, I would say. So, anyway, thank you so much. And remember, you're the boss here. You make your decisions. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to Thrive. John Kelly's Thrive. Just introduce myself to you that do not know me. I am a cocaine addiction specialist, along with a few other titles. Also, social worker, profiler, addiction specialist all the way. One thing I will tell you is that I am also a recovering cocaine addict. I was a very hard cocaine addict, and it almost took my life. So here I am recovering. And I started off doing volunteer work in my recovery for a hospital, working with younger kids because I didn't want them to take the path I took. And it went pretty well. And I was asked if I'd be interested in becoming a counselor. And I said, sure. And then I started on my way getting into the counseling field. So after being a counselor for a while, I had to go back to school and I became a psychotherapist and moved on to continue myself and continue moving around and getting around the field. And I ended up doing a lot of work for a hospital. I started to get promoted from outpatient and inpatient into the hospital setting itself and ended up on a medical intervention unit specifically designed for addiction, all types of addictions, substance addictions, that is. There was no, it wasn't for sexual addiction or gambling addiction. But as we know, a lot of cocaine addicts are not just addicted to cocaine. Okay. So then, I decided to look at what really created and had a lot to do, not that it created, but had a lot to do with the underlying root cause of my cocaine addiction. And I decided that low self esteem, feelings of inadequacy, inferiority, insecurity had a lot to do with it. I really believe that had a lot to do with it because if you're feeling really negative feelings, you want to get out of that blah kind of attitude and feel something more positive, you can medicate yourself. And cocaine definitely was my medication of choice, okay, to get out of any kind of funk or to get out of any kind of negative feelings coming from low self esteem. So 23 years ago, I wrote this book, Warning Signs, a guidebook for parents. And the whole book, which was purchased from me by Regnery Publishing in Washington, the book is pretty much focused on my theory, low self-esteem, the beginning of addiction. Okay. Like I said, there's certainly other factors involved with addictions, but I really believe with addiction that we have this little negative voice inside our heads. I call it the internal critic, telling us we should have done this, should have done that. Really, really being an internal critic and really causing some really negative thoughts. Now, of course, thoughts create feelings, or if you don't know, you know it now. So negative thoughts create negative feelings. Well, for anybody out there doing coke, like I was, if you're starting to feel negative inside for whatever reason, whatever that negative feeling consists of, you just do some cocaine. That'll take care of that. You'll definitely get out of that negative feeling and attitude. There's no question about it. And when we look at cocaine, the reason it'll take you right out of any kind of blah or negative feelings that you're having is because it is a very strong central nervous system stimulant. Okay. And the reason cocaine is so addicting is because of how it interacts with the pleasure center of the brain. Some of you already know this. Some of you have been to rehab. Some of you have been trying to quit. Some of you have been relapsing. And some of you haven't tried to quit at all yet. It hasn't gotten to that point. But what cocaine does is it stimulates dopamine and other neurotransmitters, fancy word for brain chemicals in our brain. And that is what produces the high, especially when you're stimulating dopamine and you're stimulating serotonin. Okay. They'll definitely get you out of any blonde mood you might be in. Okay. The problem is you'll notice that when after you've been using a while, your highs don't reach the same height. They don't reach the same pleasure that you were getting before. You don't get as high as you used to, in other words. What happens is your highs get lower, if you've noticed that. And lots of times it might take some more coke to try and reach that high. Usually, though, you'll never get back to the early highs. You'll be chasing those early highs, for the rest of your addiction period, how long it may be. And the reason for that is because every time you stimulate dopamine or you stimulate serotonin or any of the other neurotransmitters, they start to deplete. You start to deplete them. So the next time you go out to get high again, you can't get back there because you don't have the same brain chemical. You don't have the same brain chemical that you started with. So you can't reach those same old highs. It's not possible anymore. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Okay. And your highs have gotten considerably lower. Okay. And as they get lower, and of course that means you're depleting neurotransmitter brain chemical, you'll start to even feel more paranoid. And I'm sure those of you that have been out there and using cocaine understand what I'm talking about. Okay, you will become more paranoid. You'll be looking, see who's following you. You'll be looking out the windows. You might be closing the shades. You might be scared to, pick up the phone. I mean, the paranoia can start slow, but the more you use, the more the paranoia can get worse, and the more the paranoia can overwhelm you. And again, this is because you're losing neurotransmitter, you're losing brain chemical. The more cocaine you use, the more chemical or neurotransmitter you will lose. The more you use, the more you lose. It's that simple, okay? Because you're depleting it. Every time you get high, you're depleting it. Of course, I didn't know this, and I was getting crazier and crazier because I was losing my brains. The more you deplete, the more depressed and paranoid you will become. There is no question about it. No question about it. Also, too, just something else worth mentioning. If I can do this, so can you. If I can kick it and go up the ladder, so can you. Some of you might know me from being on TV. I've done a lot of TV shows. I've been written up a lot. I've been published a lot. I showed you one book I wrote. Here's my second book. It's called Discovering Lazarus. This is the good, the bad, and the ugly of John Kelly. This is from soup to nuts, the beginning to the end. How I kicked the cocaine addiction, how I ended up becoming a counselor, psychotherapist, profiler, and ended up on the president's committee for the drug strategy for the country. But that goes all the way back to President Clinton. Okay. So anyway, it was called the Lee Brown Clinton Committee back in the day for the drug strategy for the United States. So the point I'm trying to make is if I can do it, you can do it. And please don't lose hope in yourself. Most importantly, you keep trying. You don't stop trying. All right. You know, you'll get to a point pretty much where you won't even get high anymore if you continue with Coke, especially if you're doing crack, or if you're shooting it. Because bottom line, snorting Coke is one thing, but once you start booting it, shooting it, and smoking it and crack. You start with crack. I mean, you're on the express. All right, now you're on the express, and you'll go down a lot faster, a lot quicker, and you'll be a lot more addicted. There's no question about it. You'll see what happens, and you guys know what I'm talking about, most of you, that with cocaine, it will start to interact with probably every part of your life. Okay. Definitely part of your sex life if you haven't realized that already. Okay. I mean, you will become hypersexual in the beginning, and then later on, you'll feel like sex, but you will not be able to perform. And the reason you will not be able to perform is because, of the coke, right? You've diminished your ability to be very sexual. All right. It really takes over your life. The addiction comes from is connected to the brain. It's not as much a physical addiction as you guys know, like heroin or some of the central nervous system depressants. It's really more of an addiction to the brain. The addiction with cocaine is takes place in the brain. It takes place in the brain, and the withdrawal coming off cocaine is more emotional than it is physical. But it is very, very, very extremely addicting once your brain gets used to it. I mean, it is really a hard addiction to kick. However, I think anybody can kick it that wants to, and then they can turn their life around. If I could turn my life around, believe me, you could turn your life around. No doubt about it. Okay. We've done an educational piece with art drawing and showing exactly how the your brain chemical is depleted, and you can watch that at the link below and also in the description. Okay, you'll have a link to it, but I'm doing it on a chart, so it's something you can plainly see on how the cocaine affects and depletes your brain chemical or neurotransmitter. In summing it up, cocaine is kind of pretty much the more you use, the lower your highs. But the lower your highs will equal the more you use. So the lower your highs, the more you use, the lower your highs, the lower your highs, the more you use. And off you go into a crazy land, insanity land. I mean, there's no question about it. Eventually, with that type of use and depletion going on, you'll deplete yourself of brain chemical and you will engage in what we call cocaine psychosis. Cocaine psychosis. Some of you already are there. Others, if you continue, you will end up there. I guarantee you, okay? Because you only have so much brain chemical, you only have so much neurotransmitter, and if you're constantly depleting it, you can't replenish it as fast as you deplete it. All right, so you're going to end up with what we call cocaine psychosis. That kind of much comes after the paranoia, but the paranoia is included with cocaine psychosis. Okay, and then it becomes part of the paranoia that you'd be feeling. In fact, eventually you'll deplete so much that you're going to need probably some kind of psychiatric intervention and probably inpatient psychiatric care if you continue, because you'll just get crazier and crazier. And some of you know what I'm talking about. I mean, there's no question about it. You'll start hearing stuff, seeing stuff. You may even become suicidal. I mean, there's no question. What I've seen work to stop, and that's why we're here today to talk about stopping cocaine use. What I've seen work for me. After you go through an emotional detox and you get off it, and I suggest you do that detox, in a medically supervised place. Some people have no choice but to do it in their house. But the most important thing is that you are away from people, places, and things that you were around when you use cocaine, because anything you were around while running and using cocaine is now considered a trigger and will trigger your use. It can be a visual trigger, it can be an auditory trigger, it can be a feelings trigger. That's why, there's a lot of good recovery. And I'm not telling you what to do. How you want to recover is your business. I have found that Cocaine Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or even Alcoholics Anonymous for cocaine addicts works big time, because they're around sober people. Because in order to stay away from cocaine and not pick it back up and not relapse, is you have to give up the people, places, and things. You've got to stay away from people, places, and things. I mean, there's no question about it because it's so addicting. So if you think if you've been partying with Frankie or Jimmy or Joey, and you're still gonna hang out with them, and they're gonna use coke, but you're not, what doesn't work? I tried it. It doesn't work. They'll say, "Oh yeah, right. We need to get straight. This stuff's really killing us." But you know what? Let's start tomorrow. Let's always start tomorrow. Okay, and that's because they want to get high tonight. And tomorrow never comes. Tomorrow never comes when you're hanging out with your friends that you're used to using with. You need different friends. There's no question about it. And again, staying away from people, places, and things. You know, um, you have to stay away from anything that has to do with cocaine, especially your dealer. You know, um, if you carried a certain amount of money with you to cop with when you were out there, you might want to think about, just carrying enough money to get you through the day, like a $20 bill or something, or a little bit more, but not enough that you can go out and cop with or cop much with, for sure, right? If you only got a 20 on you, it's not going to be something that's going to be enough for you. There's no question about it. And a taste is worse than anything because you get a taste, you're going to want to go back for more. You know how it works. I don't have to tell you how it works, right? You also have to be mindful of the places that you go to use cocaine, or you did go to use cocaine, right? And connect with, and the places that you connect with somebody for cocaine. I mean, you have to be mindful of the places, staying away from people, places, and things that have anything to do with coke. Okay, because psychological triggers, visual triggers, auditory triggers, they can set you up. They can set you up for a major relapse. So it's very important for you to stay away from these places. I mean, take my word for it. I tried it 100 times. All right. And my way did not work. I had to give it all up. I had to get away from it. I had to get away from the people, places, and things, or there's no way I would have stopped. And I would not be here today talking to you. I would be dead. All right. Take my word for it. The other thing you should be mindful of it's things that not having any thing around, like you don't want any cocaine paraphernalia around your house. You certainly don't want any coke. So somebody should come in and clean your house up. One of your friends, family member, whatever. Maybe you'll do it if you don't have anybody else, but you got to clean that house out. You got to get rid of all that cocaine and all the paraphernalia that will trigger you to go pick up. There's no question about it. You have to be mindful of songs, even songs. You don't even realize it at the time. You're hearing certain songs, or whatever. And these could be a trigger for you to pick up cocaine. So you try to be mindful of that. If you're listening to a song and you're getting an urge to go pick up, that song has something to do with your use and may not be a good song for you right now. It's up to you. Also, movies, depending on the movies, like Scarface or any movie that's heavy duty with cocaine use. I mean, especially in early recovery. Maybe after a couple of years, 3 years or so in recovery, you might want to you be able to see that and handle that. But I'll tell you, man, it's very, very hard not to be triggered by watching people, even in the movies or on television or wherever, snorting cocaine. All right. And the other thing is, I'd like you to be mindful of the times that you would usually go on a run to use cocaine. All right. Like you have a ritual. You that uses cocaine have some type of ritual. Okay. And on how you use cocaine, where you use cocaine. Do you snort it? Do you smoke it? Do you boot it? What time do you usually go on your run? Did you have to have something in the morning to wake up for? Have a piece there to wake up to. I mean, you have you. There's a ritual. You have a ritual. Everybody does, okay, but it's all different. The little pieces of it are different, right? The ritual, and you've got to learn to fill that time up that you would normally use to running and snorting cocaine. You want to fill that up with something else. You want to use something else, something productive. Okay. I don't care what it is, as long as it's not hanging around Coke or people or places, filling that time up that you would normally use out there using cocaine on something else, go fishing or something. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but something else. And hopefully something constructive. Okay. Something that's going to build you up. I got into exercise. Maybe that's something you'd like, some kind of movement, you know, and something stimulating that fills up that time and keeps you away from coke. Also, you got to be mindful of other drugs as well that you used with coke. For instance, if you're a big drinker and you were doing coke at the same time, I call it like a speedball because alcohol is central nervous system depressant, cocaine's a central nervous system stimulant. So, you'd be drinking and snorting, snorting and drinking, drinking, snorting, snorting and drinking. So, what you're doing is trying to find that mellow middle all night. And the more coke you do, the more you'll drink too. So, make you get crazier even quicker. Okay. Also, marijuana. Maybe you did a lot of pot when you were smoking, or maybe you were smoking a lot of pot when you were doing cocaine. Okay. You got to watch alcohol and marijuana bring you back to the cocaine. Okay. They can trigger you, they can give you the urge, and you're feeling uninhibited from alcohol and marijuana. So off you go to pick some up. All right. So you got to be very, very cautious about that. And I would suggest you try and stay drug free, while you're in your recovery process. And even after that, stay drug free of all drugs. And I think you have a much better shot of not relapsing. No question about it. Also, being mindful of the people, places, and things, uh, you know, who can you associate with? All right. You definitely don't want to associate with people that used to do cocaine with, because that'll trigger you. So you got to find, a new social group and be open minded about that. I'm not telling you what to do, but be open minded about that. There's plenty of recovery out there in the rooms, like I said, of AA, NA, and CA. If you want to be around people that you can feel safe around that are not, using cocaine. Most important thing is keeping an eye on those triggers, um, because those triggers, whether they're visual, auditory, or just these negative feelings you get, can set you back. Talking about triggers, I had a friend of mine who was strung out on heroin and got into recovery after being on heroin 30 years. I don't know how he lived so long, but I helped him out. This is when I was working out of a detox in inner city in New Jersey. And, the bottom line was that, he would get triggered when he would be going into New York All right. Now, this is after he was in recovery for about a year, but he'd feel this urge coming on to pick up. Well, even though he didn't comp in New York and he was going in there for music, poetry, whatever the heck he was doing, art, the Empire State Building that he would see looked like a needle to him. Okay. And, he was an IV user. So that Empire State Building looked like a spike to him. And even not knowing, it took him for a while to kind of get it and grasp it. But that would cause him to have the urge. And he didn't know where the urge was coming from because all he was doing was looking at the skyline of New York City. But then he figured it out. It was the New York, or it was the Empire State Building, looking like a spike. Okay. So you have to keep these visual triggers in mind. You have to be on your guard for these urges that seem to come out of nowhere, but there's a reason they're coming because you're either seeing, hearing, or feeling something that had to do with your use, going back to your use. And anytime when that urge comes on, I feel you talk to somebody. You just don't try to keep it to yourself and deal with it yourself. I feel you talk to somebody you can trust, somebody that's sober, and you can talk to them about this feeling you're having. And by talking about it, and that's why talk therapy works. What you do is you take your feelings, you turn them into language, and you get rid of it. So you can actually get rid of that urge by talking about it, talking to somebody about it, and turning it into language and get rid of it. Because when you talk, your language leaves you, right? You put it out to somebody, put it out to the universe or whatever. Right? Get rid of it. Now, the other thing is realizing cocaine is such a strong central nervous system stimulant. You have to realize that you're a stimulant addict. All right. You're not a depressant addict. Your drug of choice is not going to be pretty much, heroin or downs of any sort. You may have some alcohol or drink some alcohol, but really, if you're a real stimulant addict, like with cocaine or methamphetamine, meth is something you'd be interested in. You're into a stimulating experience, not a down kind of sedative experience, like with heroin or fentanyl or the other downer drugs that are out there. Okay. So, it's very important that, you try to find positive, stimulating experiences. Put your creative juices to work. You know, like I said, if I could do it, you could do it. Figure out what you want to do, and get on your way. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to be doing meth or other uh, central nervous system stimulants that can bring you back to cocaine. You know, again, if you do drink too much or you do get involved with any kind of downer, I would say drug, central nervous system depressant drug that can lower your um, inhibitions and uninhibit you. And if you feel uninhibited, you may think, boy, I really, you probably will get the urge to use some coke, and it'll send you on your way. So it's not, even though you're a stimulant addict and that's your drug of choice, you want to stay away from not only stimulant drugs but other drugs as well that could set you up for going back on a cocaine. Now, also, too, unfortunately, some of you who are watching this, and I myself, suffer from ADD or ADHD. Okay. And you may not even know you do. You may not even know you do. But I will tell you, if you do, you are a prime candidate to become addicted to central nervous system stimulants. You're a prime candidate because you crave stimulation. Right? Your brain craves stimulation. That's how you run. That's how you operate. And probably a lot of you understand this. that that's something your brain craves. The bottom line is, cocaine really will mellow you out. If you have ADD or ADHD, you'll be able to feel calmer. You'll be able to concentrate better. I mean, there's no question about it. What's Adderall? Well, if you went into a doctor's office and you suffer from ADD or ADHD, they're going to suggest you have, probably suggest you're going Adderall or a similar kind of drug, which is a central nervous system stimulant. What is cocaine? Central nervous system stimulant. What is methamphetamine? So the central nervous system stimulant. So you have to understand this, that they use central nervous system stimulants, okay, in the medical field to treat ADD or ADHD. For some of us, we never really went to a doctor in any which way, shape, or form, and we realized that we could treat ourselves with cocaine and it would make us feel calmer, even if we didn't realize what our diagnosis was. Okay. So, very, very important that you find out if you suffer from ADD or ADHD. You know, sometimes before a doctor can make a good diagnosis, he has to have you off the drug for a certain amount of time. And you have to put together some clean time because if you're under the influence of the drug, it's very hard, um, to be diagnosed. For most, um, mental conditions, however, with ADD and ADHD, might be worth a shot talking to somebody as soon as possible to see if you suffer from that. If you cannot stop using cocaine, because it'll just destroy you, and there might be an outpatient treatment where they can start to get you started, get you off the path. They get you, into a safe situation, a safe place, and help you with a detox and go to work on your ADD or ADHD if you have it. But certainly you need to get professional medical advice on that. Usually that's going to come from a psychiatrist or an addictionologist, somebody that's really comfortable and has treated a lot of addiction. And if they've treated a lot of addiction, they've seen a lot of ADD and ADHD as well. And don't forget, even before Adderall, what was the drug's choice to treat ADD or ADHD? Ritalin, another central nervous system stimulant. So the way to really calm somebody down, get them focused, get them straightened out, okay, is a medication that's a central nervous system stimulant. Unfortunately, these stimulants that are not so good for us and are really, uh, horrible for us and set us up for destruction and failure, um, are on the street, and especially with meth and with cocaine. Cocaine definitely will help soothe your ADD or ADHD temporarily, and then make it worse. Because again, you're depleting the neurotransmitter, the brain chemicals. So you're just going to get crazier and crazier. You may not realize this, before your interaction with cocaine, but you are susceptible to becoming extremely addicted to central nervous stimulants. And I'll say it for the last time: if you suffer from ADD or ADHD, you're definitely a prime candidate to be addicted to some kind of substance. There's no question about it. So hopefully you get a good evaluation from a professional. If you can't stop, you stay away from people, places, and things. You probably, if you've been using for quite a while and been on a lot of runs like I was, you're going to need to deal with some anxiety. There can be some post-traumatic stress, uh, from being in the culture, the drug culture. And also depression. Definitely, with most cases, for people that have been using cocaine or any kind of central nervous system stimulant for a long time, or any drug actually, for a long period of time, even like a strong central nervous system depressant, like heroin or fentanyl. I mean, you're going to need probably an antidepressant, to help you start to get stable and rebuild, start to rebuild that neurotransmitter that you lost. Okay. And then it'll also, there's medications out there to also help you deal with cocaine psychosis if that's something, you're going through. I mean, I was on the unit one day and I had a guy come in and I couldn't understand him. I mean, he wasn't speaking English. So I had, somebody come over and interpret what he was saying. And what he was saying, and he had all these marks all over his arms and everything. I'm sure some of you can, relate to this. And and he was talking like all these scabs on his arms, and he was saying that he had these spiders, coming out of his arms and running down his hands and stuff and everything. And he was trying to catch them. He's picking at them, trying to get rid of them. So he was all messed up. His arms were all blood and scabby and everything. And that's cocaine psychosis. Okay, I mean, he had gotten to the point. I mean, he's way beyond paranoia at this point. All right, I mean, he's having visual and auditory hallucinations. So he's really pretty messed up on it. So the bottom line is, if I could do it, you could do it. And continued use of cocaine will lead you into insanity. I will tell you right now, it is only a matter of time that the cocaine you use will progress. You will become addicted and you will become insane. And there is no question about it. Hey, thanks a lot for listening to me. I hope all you guys stay well out there. God bless you. And until we meet again, and we will have a lot of educational stuff. In fact, we have a lot up now on our Thrive site. If you want to go and look at it on various drugs of addiction. As I said, I'm an addiction specialist. So, bottom line, please feel free to take a look. It's all free education. It's on Thrive, John Kelly's Thrive, and the links will be down below, in the description. Again, thank you so much. Take care of yourself. And until next time, God bless.